Well, as we say, starting off in the United States, where the final presidential debate has seen the Republican and Democratic nominees spar for 90 minutes in Nashville, Tennessee, as the stakes in this election became clear just 11 days to the elections. With the incumbent president, Donald Trump, trailing Joe Biden, he portrayed his Democratic rival as corrupt, bad for the U.S. economy, and weak on foreign policy. Biden hit back over what he articulated was the president's poor handling of the coronavirus pandemic and divisions in America, fueled by Trump. Now, for more on this, let's cross via Skype to our correspondent in New York, Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Sherwin, a very, very good morning to you. Let me go this way. How was it? What did you think of it today? I mean, obviously, none of what we saw the last time, but of course, you know, this is a very, very important one. There was no screaming and shouting as previously. But talk to us. What did you think of it?
Yeah, no, both nominees using their words, Leanne. I mean, having a conversation. Look, the Presidential Debates Commission instituting new rules for this debate. Once the moderator posed a question to one of the nominees, the other one's microphone was muted. But as this cordial tenor of this debate continued, there wasn't so much turning off of mics. Both candidates, nominees, were listening to each other. They talked about coronavirus. They talked about foreign policy, stimulus negotiations that are ongoing between the White House and Capitol Hill. They talked about minimum wage, climate change, federal subsidies for fossil fuels, healthcare, which is a big conversation point in the context of coronavirus, the question of race in America, national security and interference in the U.S. election. And also, let's not leave out the stunning and sterling performance from Kristen Welker. Many people are wondering who the hell is that? Well, that is the moderator in the debate, who had an exceptional night, managing to control both the flow and the conversation between these high-profile candidates. 11 days, Leanne, just before this election.
I mean, a lot of issues were brought up, so let's try and break some of them down. Jobs being at the key of all of this. So how did they both go in discussing the whole issue of jobs in America? And I know that is something that Trump is very much so vocal about.
Well, the question of jobs in the economy is, of course, directly related to the health emergency that the United States is still confronting. And so, to kick off the debate, Kristen Welker asked questions about, this administration's handling of the coronavirus. And this is where Joe Biden really managed to land one of his decisive blows. He talked about, the 220,000 Americans that have lost their lives, Leanne, a tragic number that is. And he said that the president takes no responsibility and that anyone who is responsible for that many deaths should not be president of the United States. He talked about how Donald Trump was the same person who said that the coronavirus would be gone by Easter. Remember, Easter was in April this year, or when the warmer months, when it got warmer in the United States. Of course, we are now heading into what he called the dark winter, and the coronavirus is still with us. The president pivoted towards sort of talking about how you cannot have the American economy closed, the fact that he as president cannot stay in a basement like Joe Biden. He also talked about the need to get states around this country open again. And so there were very divergent views when you're talking about jobs, the economy, coronavirus, climate change, very different views between the Democratic and Republican nominee, Leanne.
Yeah, race also came into the equation, with Donald Trump, the president, actually saying he's the least racist person in the room. And I think that took a lot of people by surprise. I mean, talk to us about this issue, because this is a very big issue in these elections.
Yeah, it's not the first time that we've heard Donald Trump say that. I mean, he hearkens to this, line regularly in his conversations. He says, he compares himself to Abraham Lincoln. As having done, Abraham Lincoln is essentially the president that freed the slaves in the United States, and he says he's second to Abraham Lincoln in terms of what he's done for black people in the United States. So there was a big conversation. Part of the debate was around race in America, and they were asked about, the talk that black families need to have, in particular with black males, young boys in this country, particularly in terms of their interactions with law enforcement in the United States. And Joe Biden really had a good moment where he talked about understanding the nuances of that conversation, talking about specifics about when a cop stops you and you're driving your car, put your hands on your steering wheel. When they ask you a question, say yes, sir, no, sir. essentially what black families, black mothers in particular, have with their sons. President Trump talked about what he's done in terms of criminal justice reform, in creating opportunity zones in some of the inner cities that would impact, in large part, Hispanic and black people in this country, but lacks the empathy really to resonate with the emotional element that is attached to that conversation. And that's really where Joe Biden stands out, right? He understands loss. He understands the pain. And of course, he's been a politician much longer than President Donald Trump, so understands the nuances of how to communicate on those very touchy subjects like race in America.
Climate change also coming up as a big topic. I mean, there were a lot of them, but let's just quickly wrap this one up in terms of how you thought they both fared. I mean, if we have to look at it, because this is such an important debate. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there are already around about 45 million American citizens that have cast their vote before the actual day. And I mean, this is a massive number, but this was important. Who do you think held their own better in this particular election? Debate, I should say.
Claim victory here, and this was a decent conversation. Both articulated questions. If I were to look at polls, there was one on CNN, there's one online right now. They are giving victory to Joe Biden. This was really articulate his position well. And remember that Biden had the advantage of this debate. He's leading that. He's got the edge in the states that are so critical of the election. It determines the winner. So, in terms of who had to do the most, that fell to President Donald Trump. Did he achieve that? I think many of his supporters will certainly believe so. He didn't lose his cool. It was a conversation. So I think both will walk away from this debate really not having shifted perhaps anything in terms of the numbers in this debate. And they will both feel very satisfied with how they translated, certainly over the television screens. But in terms of how it fundamentally shifts the dynamics in this race, in terms of how it moves the needle, I'm not sure it does that. And as you correctly point out, almost 50 million people have voted already. So the window of opportunity has closed in terms of, generating momentum just 11 days before Election Day.
All right. Sherwin, we'll leave it there. I know there'll be a lot of analysis taking place as we saw this being broadcast live as well here on SABC News. For those of you that have stayed up and watched it, we'd love to hear from you. Sherwin, you can go and sleep now. We'll chat to you later on today. Thank you very, very much for covering it for us out in New York.